So UX design is a pretty awesome job. I've been doing it for the last 8 years. It's a high-paying tech job. You can work remote. I work here in my basement. I don't have a degree. I don't do any coding. It can be incredibly flexible. I think of all my friends, I have the most flexible job. It allows me to make YouTube videos, work on my own stuff on the side. So it's a pretty good gig, and I think going into the future with AI and everything, it's only gonna be in higher and higher demand. So it's a good field to get into. So in this video, I'm gonna talk through how I got my first job in UX. It can be incredibly difficult to break into a new field. So I'll give my advice for anyone just starting out. And at the end of the video, I'll go through exactly how much I've been paid as a UX designer, so my exact salary amounts, and then like the different increases that I've got over the years. Back in 2013, when I was still in college, I started this app. Me and a friend started a startup. I kind of gravitated towards the design. I started doing a lot of learning on my own through online courses, YouTube videos. My designs were terrible when I first started out. I look back at those first designs and they're awful. But the cool thing about it was they were actually being built. So we were like funding this company and getting the designs built and then putting the app in front of people and then getting feedback. So I was going through that whole feedback loop. And at the time, I think the thing that made it the biggest impact that allowed me to actually get into UX was my obsession with startups. So I got obsessed with all the different startups and startup founders. There's something called Y Combinator, which you've probably heard of, which is like a startup incubator. And they put out a course, kind of a course, like a lecture series called How to Start a Startup. This was back in 2013. Like they're doing way more on YouTube now, which is an awesome resource. Like if you're trying to get into UX, because I was like understanding how to make good products. My co-founder and I moved to the Bay Area to pursue raising money. We thought we would, raise an angel round. And then at the time I was dating my now wife, we got engaged. So it was time to get a real job. So I started to look into it, like what job could I get? Having been a startup founder, what job at a tech company could I get? And I read the description. I have a vivid memory of reading the description of UX designer and thinking like, man, that's exactly what I love about startups. So I'll just do that. So I put together a portfolio and a resume and started applying. I applied for like a million different jobs. I probably interviewed with like 10 different companies. Like I got all dressed up and went in and sat down with them and interviewed with probably 10 companies, maybe more. And I couldn't get a job. And so I finally took this job at a call center, which was horrible. I only lasted like a month there. But while I was there, I got an interview opportunity for an internship at an e-commerce company. So I showed up to this company on like this intern day, and it was like a group interview. I think they were trying to do like the Google thing with like the spinny hats, and they interviewed us all, and we had like group activities, and there were like several people trying to get the UX design job. I didn't even realize that I was like directly competing with them, but it came down to me and this other girl. And my boss later told me, he was the hiring manager. He later told me that he picked me because I remembered his name and I like talked to him and asked him about himself. Just because I was like, kind of charismatic, I guess. But I remembered the guy's name, and we were riding in an elevator and I was like, how do you like working here? And I just like talked to the guy, and he liked me more than this girl. And that's how I got my first design job. The biggest thing that will set you apart, in my opinion, is proof that you are actually good. And the proof is in metrics. So if I was just starting out, I would find someone that has a website of some sort or an app or something, even like Facebook ads or something like that. I would go to them and offer to work for free to redesign some aspect of their site for free. And then I would just ask them to track some kind of a metric, whether it's like time that users are spending on the page or the bounce rate, or like I said before, conversions or email signups, like whatever it is that you think you can improve on that page, because then that's proof that you can actually improve something through design. If you can come up with a case study and at the very beginning show, I redesigned this page and it saw a 4% lift in conversion, that's just incredibly powerful. And then you can kind of tell the story of how you did it. It's so much more powerful than showing some case study on like a BS product that never even saw the light of day. It was never built, never used by any real people. Your case study is just full of all this like UX jargon about empathy, paths, user journeys. Most of that stuff is total crap. If you can just prove that your design improved the site in some way using metrics, and that you did it by talking to users, you validated your ideas, however it is that you came to the conclusions that you did, and you would explain that like in your case study, but just the proof of like, we set out to do this and it was a success by this metric. Maybe I'm just a bad UX designer, but I honestly think like most of all that jargon stuff that you'll learn in like a boot camp is total garbage. Whenever we're hiring for designers, it's incredible how similar all these people look. Like they've all gone to some boot camp, they've all got the Google UX certification, and they all have like a bunch of projects from school, but very few of them show something that was actually built and used by real people. And even fewer of them show actual metrics that they moved through their design. If you're like brand new to design, you're like just starting out, I actually think those UI challenges are pretty good, just because it gives people a chance to see like if you have good taste and if you understand the basics in terms of like spacing and aesthetic and page hierarchy. Because if you have nothing, if you have no designs, then it's just so hard to know if you have like the basic competency to even do the job. But if you can show even just like, this is like visually, I'm covered. Visually, I know what I'm doing. And then as far as like moving the metrics and making something people want or reducing friction or time on task and all that crap, that can all be learned later on. All right, so this is exactly how much I've made as a UX designer over the years. Starting out in 2016, when I joined this company as an intern, I started at $14 an hour. And I actually found out later that other interns that joined started at $20 an hour. I don't know, I think it's just because they asked for a little bit more. So yeah, I started off on the low end, $14 an hour. And then after a few months, they offered me a full-time job. So I actually went in and my manager sat me down. He's like, hey, we want to bring you on full-time. What are your salary expectations? And I was like, I mean, 55,000. And he was like, how about we do 65,000? And I was so stoked. I talked about this in one of my shorts. You can go check those out. But yeah, I took my wife to this fancy restaurant. We felt so rich. Like I just couldn't believe that just felt like so much money. I think a year later, they bumped me up to $75,000. And then a couple of years after that, I got an offer from another company. I went out and interviewed, and I got an offer for $85,000 from this other company. And then I took it to my manager, and I was actually planning on leaving the company. I was going to take the offer. I took it to my manager, and they said, okay, well, what would it take for you to stay? And I was like, how about $100,000? And it felt like I felt ridiculous even asking for that much money. But then he took me in to talk to like the head of product, like the main guy, and we all kind of sat down and chatted. And he's like, the head of product guy was like, okay, how about we do 90,000 now? And it was like towards the end of the year. And he's like, and then on the new year, when the new year comes, we'll do 100,000. And then I was like, okay, yeah, sounds good. I mean, that's just a few months, so not a big deal. And then I left, turned down the offer that I had, accepted the offer with my current company. And then the new year came around and they forgot that they said that. They didn't remember saying that. So there was no bump up to 100,000. And so I like went and brought it up to them. But the lesson learned there is I should have like left that meeting, immediately gone to my computer and written an email to all the people that were there and said, hey, I'm so excited about this opportunity. I appreciate the offer so much. So just so we remember, the offer was 90,000, and then on the new year 100,000. Because if I would have had that email with like them, responding, then I would have got that raise. So get it in writing just by typing up a quick email. So I was at 90,000 for a while, and then after a few years, I was bumped up to 118,000. And I think at this point is when I became like a UX lead. So I actually had like direct reports, and I was doing one-on-ones and conducting meetings. I was a lead. So 118, and then at that point is when the pandemic hit. Everyone went remote, and I went out and interviewed for other jobs, and I was planning on leaving my company, and then I got an offer from another company, and I was like, wait a second, what if I don't leave my current company and I just work both jobs? And I've made plenty of videos about that. I'm not going to go into it here, but at that point I was making, it was 130 from the second company, and then 118, and then a couple of months into the 2 jobs thing, I was pulled aside by my manager at the first job. And I was panicking. He said, hey, we appreciate your good work and just wanted to let you know that you're getting bumped up to 129. And for the longest time, I was pushing for 130, and they got me up to 129. So for a while there, when I was doing the 2 jobs, I was making like around $260,000 plus bonuses and stuff. So I did that for about 8 months, and then I quit one of the jobs, went back to making 130,000. And then last year I got a new job. So now I'm making more than 130. I'll just say more than 130, less than 200. And I should say that these are all companies based in Utah and that I live in Utah. So if I were to go to the Bay Area, you're like 200,000, like north of 200,000 if you're like a design lead. And I think just as like a standard UX designer, you could be in like the 160 to, you know, up over 200,000. So, I mean, that's a pretty decent income. And I mean, I think there are, you know, developers in Silicon Valley that are making like 300,000 and more. Like there's always going to be people that are making more money. As far as like a flexible job that's also high impact on the company, like if I were to actually calculate my hourly rate right now for like actual hours like sitting in my computer working. So that's it for the video. If you have any other questions or you're looking to get into UX, comment below and I will respond to as many of them as I can. And of course, subscribe to the channel. Love you guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye.